Resident Evil 9 lets you choose between third person or first person camera angle, guys. You can actually make this change mid-game on the fly from the options by just pausing the game. Even if an enemy is chasing you, you can pause and make this change immediately. They showed us specifically footage of this happening during a chase in gameplay. So whether you like first person or third person, you don't have to worry about being stuck on one or forced into just using it. Capcom really listened to the fans here. Thanks to Capcom for inviting us and showing us an exclusive private demo of Resident Evil 9 gameplay, Onimusha gameplay, and we were actually able to play hands-on Pragmata, which was actually a really surprising game. I didn't expect for it to play the way that it did, and I genuinely think it was my current favorite game that I played at Playdays. In this video, we're going to talk about all three of them, starting with Resident Evil 9. Unfortunately, we weren't provided B-roll footage of the game, so I can't show you this, but I can describe the elements of like what I experienced, and hopefully you guys will soon be able to see it. I'll also try to edit the trailer to showcase what I experienced in this presentation, because some of that footage is what I saw in this gameplay. The entire demo was in first person, and then at the very end of it, the final reveal was them going into the menu to swap to third person, which made our entire theater that was viewing it erupt into crazy hype noises. You can actually see our reactions here with Susie and Max front and center. I actually was sitting behind Max. You can't see me because he's very tall. This is ultimately giving the community what everybody's been asking for, and it's already one of the best decisions that I've seen so far. But Capcom has me incredibly locked in. I will say, in this demo showcase, the first person view combined with Grace's voice actress's terrified breathing and shuddering breath, the dark hallways and eerie statues are perfect. The sprint speed of Grace is a lot slower to create more tension in chase encounters and survival, which I think is great for them to go back to. The sprint speed seems to be that on the slower side compared to like Resident Evil Village, and it's more like Resident Evil 7. During this demo, Grace did not have a gun, so it was kind of just focused on surviving and running away and sneaking around. Comment down below any questions you guys might have about these games, and I'm going to answer what I can. Subscribe and hit that notification bell to help raise that 38% even higher. We got a lot to talk about, so let's get into this video and start with Resident Evil 9. The portion of which they showed us, starting from Grace waking up upside down, tied to a stretcher, it's actually the same shot from the trailer. She's hooked up to a blood siphoning device. Someone is collecting and draining her blood. She wakes up in a panic and does breathing exercises to calm down, to think of what her next plan is and verify her surroundings. She pulls the tube that's drawing blood from her arm, and it falls down, causing the vial to break, which she can then pull up to her hand and then use it as a knife to cut the restraints that they have on her. The whole time she's doing this, by the way, the RE engine is showing some really incredible detail, from her facial expressions grimacing, the sweat on her face. She accidentally even cuts her wrist too, which shows even more detail as they zoom in on it. She frees her hands, but she can't reach her legs, so then she wiggles left and right to knock the stretcher that she's laying on over. Doing this allows her to free her legs and ultimately stand up. Then we get to control her and the gameplay starts. We actually start off by roaming these incredibly dark and dank hallways with crazy lighting. She slowly makes her way through, but the whole time she's breathing extremely hard, making her way through. You can kind of hear some extra footsteps as well, which is really trippy. Can't tell if it's her or if there's somebody behind her running around. The first 5 minutes of this showcase sets us up multiple times for jump scares, but nothing really happens. Bottles roll out from corridors, we go through some doors, we find some fuse boxes that we need to activate so we can raise the electric fence that's blocking our path so she can leave. But of course, in typical Resident Evil fashion, we gotta find tools first. Eventually, after they stop teasing us, Grace finally tries to open a door and a dead body falls out. She checks the pulse of the body. While she's focused and looking down, a large, oversized, deformed hand reaches out and grabs the body, picks it up and bites its head off. All of this is literally happening as Grace is staring up. The camera zooms in and we get a close-up of this monster's face, and it screams in her face, and we gotta run away as Grace. At this point, everybody in the theater was screaming, and the Capcom person controlling the demo was making sure to slow down while running so the monster would get closer to make us all more uncomfortable. Grace finally gets away, but the demo shows us other ways of how the monster can actually track us. We can lose it going through multiple doors sometimes, but eventually it will tear a hole in the ceiling randomly and disappear into it. As you roam around and you try to get more materials needed to activate the power for the fence, the monster can actually pop out from the ceiling. Grace moves pretty slow in this demo, but the person playing was purposely turning around, like I said, to increase the tension. She eventually gets grabbed at one point and bitten by the monster in the shoulder, which deals enough damage to put her into the yellow bar. After running away into what looks like a safe room, but it's not really. It's just a double entryway door. She then injects herself with herbs, which is the first time we're seeing this in the demo. We didn't see how she made it or if she picked it up, she just automatically had it on her. The demo then jumps forward to when she finally turns the power on and turns the gate on to leave, but the monster grabs us and the demo segment seemingly ends, which then starts up another moment right before. As the monster is chasing Grace in the hallway, the player turns around, stares at it, and clicks through the camera setting to change the perspective from first person to third person, which we can see the camera zoom out, we see Grace's full character model, and the monster's staggering height over her as it approaches. And then the demo ends. What I love a lot about this is that you truly feel helpless and you can't fight back, so your speed is nerfed, you can't always outrun the monster, and the level design is perfect with the looping point to the hallway as a passing point. The sound design behind all of this stuff is an extremely small taste of what to expect from RE9, but I'm beyond ready. We saw no Leon in this, it was only Grace Ashcroft as she was roaming around the halls and being stalked by a giant monster. There are some interesting story details to note. Grace's mother, Alyssa Ashcroft, was infected with the virus in the first game, but she eventually was given a cure. We know from the trailer it mentions that her mother died at some point and Grace is tasked to investigate something that is related to it. And in the first scene of this demo that we see, they are in fact collecting Grace's blood. To me, that says Grace's blood has traces of elements needed to revive that virus strain, as it would have been passed on to her from her mother, even if she was cured. Chatting with others who got to check out the demo with us, many of them think the monster is Lisa Trevor from the first Resident Evil game, and she's been roaming around for years and is now back in RE9. And that's it for the Resident Evil 9 impressions. I definitely want to do a deeper video when we get more footage, just so we can accurately show what we saw in better detail. Unfortunately for now, we don't have access to that footage. Thank you again, Capcom. And we don't know when Capcom will showcase that. But I really did love Onimusha, and we gotta talk about that next. The devs made sure to showcase to us a variety of combat actions to take and different options you can do, such as using the environment in combat in funny or clever ways. Onimusha had a satisfying gameplay to watch, but I can only imagine it's the same for the way that it plays. The head producer of the game was the one playing the live demo for us, and it definitely was live because the first demo that we saw on day one with the same exact stage and level, the person controlling the main character, Miyamoto Musashi, died actually twice. But in this second preview I saw, they didn't die once, and they actually did more combos. If you played previous Onimusha games, you'll know what the gameplay is. When you kill zombies, you can drain their souls that are floating around with the gauntlet that you're wielding. But they showed off some pretty neat stuff, like being able to parry two enemies at the same time, and if you're blocking with Musashi and an enemy tries to hit you from behind, he actually will automatically put his hand and katana behind him, and the animation for it is pretty damn badass to auto block it. So this way you don't need to turn all the way around. You can also use the environments, fire on the ground or nearby to push enemies into it to kill them. You can also sneak attack enemies that are unsuspecting and KO them in one shot. You could also just trigger the just frame parry like in the original games and do a quick slice through the enemies to one-shot them, almost always cutting them in half with crazy style. And there are enemies that will suck up souls from the ones that we kill and don't collect, and these same enemies will shoot them back out to you to deal damage. You could actually either dodge this or reflect it back at them. You could also reflect arrows to instantly kill zombies, and not only reflect them back at that same enemy, you could actually deflect them to other enemies depending on where you're facing. They tried to show us this in the gameplay, but the dev couldn't do it. The sound effects of the wind blowing, leaves are falling, and power clashes with the sword hitting flesh and dealing damage, the entire design of this game really stands out and is satisfying to see played. And there was a lot of cool things with parrying two enemies at once. You can actually see the animations change depending on the direction from which they approach, whether they're in your front and back, or your left and right, or front and on your side. It's pretty unique that they thought about that. We also got to see Musashi gain eyes of the Oni, giving him Oni vision, and he's able to see events of the past. But also threads are actually currently blocking our forward path to continue the story. So what we need to do now is follow an invisible thread using the Oni vision, and at the very end of this you can find a spider is actually making it and kill it, which gets rid of the block path, so now we can move forward. You can use the signature series mechanic Issen to trigger a slash to delete entire enemies. You can actually chain Issen moves together when outnumbered by inputting the command after landing a successful Issen, and this will keep the combo going. We see this get executed against 4 enemies, and it sometimes is lightning quick, but you can see Musashi actively running towards each enemy really quickly. Deflecting enough attacks puts Musashi in a powered up state, where his attacks deal more damage, and doing this can create more blue souls too, which allow you to use more skills more often. As we progress through the stage and fight more enemies, we're actually being shown unique animations, like an enemy trying to grab Musashi. If he counters at the right time, he could actually pick them up and toss them back into another group of enemies, and the souls within them can cause an explosion. It's really good for clearing crowds, but at this current moment in the footage, the producer playing it didn't have extra enemies nearby. Moving past this, we find another vision for Musashi, where crying families walk by him with their young ones tied up in barrels, and they're being forced to throw them down the cliff by these zombies. It's a really emotional moment, and Musashi forgets that this is a vision of the past, and he tries to interfere with them to stop them from dropping their children, but obviously it doesn't work, and he passes right through them. Right after this vision ends, he's actually bum rushed by Ganryu, a rival swordsman with a hilarious flair, and he's also wielding an Oni gauntlet, but he's apparently been embracing its power too often, and it somehow corrupted him. We're now put into a mini boss fight and are shown a bunch of different mechanics. If we deplete Ganryu's stagger bar low enough, we can actually get an option to do a new thing called a break Isin, which is where we can select a different part of the enemy to break and strike, which will affect the following parts of battle. Against Ganryu, if you choose to attack his head, it'll deal massive damage, but it'll also break his hat that he's wearing and is great for KO potential. But if you attack his arm, you actually end up dealing less damage, but you unlock a powered up state where you can use these light daggers to quickly strike enemies and weave in and out of combos, dealing quick strike damage. In this demo, after we beat Ganryu, he disintegrates, which the narrator of our presentation says this is actually going to be a common theme throughout our entire gameplay. Ganryu will continue to appear in the game as we progress, and it's not the last time that we see him at all. On our way to the final boss of this demo, we come across an archer in a closed room who is shooting arrows at us. Musashi can actually pick up a nearby clothes changing panel and use it as a shield to collect the arrows and then kick it towards the enemy, which deals pretty good damage and actually staggers them. So when they're staggered, we can actually go up and one-shot them and execute them pretty easily from this. Which the dev said there's plenty of other creative ways we can use the environment, and we'll have to see on full launch just how many unique ways players can actually achieve this. Approaching the final boss area, we actually find a dark mass symbol which actually activates Onivision, and a final boss of the demo actually appears for us to fight against. We can use basically all that we learned in this entire demo, but this enemy does have a bigger health pool than Ganryu. Eventually, when you finally stagger and you break Isin him, it becomes much easier from the extra damage we can inflict. I'm honestly impressed. I've never played any of the Onimusha games before, and I do want to fix all of that, but as we prep for this game to release, what shocks me the most is that Onimusha is scheduled to release still in 2026, but I believe that because the preview demo ran extremely well. It had zero hiccups and it was on the PS5 Pro. But a lot of the gameplay is expected to change, including the HUD UI, so they didn't want to really provide B-roll directly for this, which I totally get, but I can't wait for this game to release. And finally, we have Pragmata, guys. This game actually exists, and I played it for myself. I don't have footage of this, but what I played was really fun. Resident Evil 9, for example, was 60 frames per second in its gameplay. Onimusha was also 60 frames per second and played on a PS5 Pro in front of us. Pragmata, I definitely played it on a PlayStation 5 because we used the PS5 controller, but I don't know if it was a base PS5 or a PS5 Pro. However, the demo itself was 30 frames per second as this is an early build, exhibition, pre-alpha stuff. The demo actually starts with Hugh. He's passed out on the floor and his leg is damaged. The girl character, Diana, she actually finds a healing gun which repairs his missing flesh and armor to piece back to his leg, which puts his vitals back at 100% and he finally wakes up. This is actually Hugh and Diana's first time meeting because Hugh doesn't recognize her and she doesn't know him, and he also doesn't know about her capabilities. When we wake up, a computer says they found a trespassing life form was detected and it needs to eliminate it, which it tries to kill Hugh. And now we are approached with our first tutorial. This actually shows us how to use the pistol. It's a 6-shot pistol which doesn't reload. It regenerates ammo over time, and damage is really low against this enemy. It only deals about 5 or 6 damage and it barely puts a dent into it. Then Diana interferes by jumping onto her back and says she can actually hack things. And this is how Pragmata is played, and it actually genuinely surprised me, and I can't wait to play more. When Diana jumps onto your back and you finally aim at an enemy, you actually end up slowing down time, and it opens up a button prompt window where you can hack the enemy, and it functions like a puzzle game. You have to navigate through the maze of blocks that's presented in this new HUD, and you got to use the triangle, square, circle, and X button to navigate it. This will actually make you go either up, down, left, or right. Passing through enough green blocks before the final block will hack the enemy's armor and make them take bonus damage. which now makes the pistol deal almost 100 damage per hit once they've been hacked. So as you play this game, you're going to need to hack enemies to deal more damage to them, but not only that, there will be more green panels to pass through on higher difficulty enemies. And later, we also get yellow blocks, which will decrease enemy defenses the more that we use as we pass through them. This area of the game felt like it had lower gravity. I don't know if that'll change as we continue to progress further, but at least for this first level, every time that we jumped, we actually ended up floating down to where we can land. And the controls did feel a bit weighty due to the armor that Hugh has on, but overall I got used to it after about 5 minutes of playing. We can also boost around with a R1 button, which functions like a dash in any direction and is also used as our dodge. One of the devs saw me practicing speed boost where I jumped and then I boosted in the air, and then when I landed I boosted again. He said he found it interesting because in-house, when they're playtesting it, they actually use this to move around quickly in the game. It's kind of like a speedrun tech, but it'll be more effective when we get better gear, which I'm assuming is because initially our boost damage is much smaller at this point and possibly can be upgraded later on. This demo was basically a big tutorial showing us and giving us time with the new weapons and new mechanics while detailing how we need to use them. The pistol weapon has infinite ammo but only 6 in a magazine, and you need to wait for it to auto reload and regenerate ammo. You actually don't reload in this game, at least at this point that I played. You could find other weapons on the floor, but the ammo in them are actually limited. For example, the shotgun only holds 5 rounds, but if you use all of it up, the shotgun ends up disappearing from your inventory and you have to find another one to pick up. So as we play more, we actually got to be smart with which weapons that we use depending on the enemy. The shotgun basically one-shots every enemy once we hack them open and will probably be the best early game weapon. And we probably have to enhance weapons inventory as we play more, so that could actually end up expanding. We actually don't know. The first area that we're shown is a door with 5 electronic locks, which we have to go and find these individual ones and unlock them. So there's different paths we have to take to go and access them. But as we progress through and unlock doors, we find more weapons. We find a tracking beam weapon. This weapon actually is kind of interesting because it traps enemies within a sphere and stuns them, while it does tick damage over time, about 5 or 6 hits, which deal decent damage, around 40 damage per tick. It's a much longer time to kill compared to the shotgun, but I imagine this is going to be great to use for multiple waves of enemies, where if we need to take out 2 or 3 enemies from a fight, we can use this to then focus on the others. While they're in the stun orb trapped, it felt like I couldn't really shoot them either. I tried to shoot them with the other weapons, but damage wasn't really passing through it. You really shouldn't use this weapon when there's only a few enemies around. You should save it for the big fights. I mostly used the shotgun and the pistol in this demo. I can't remember if there was a 4th weapon, but I mainly used those 2. When we find one of the electronic locks, we actually end up opening it by hacking it, and it's another mini game where we use the face buttons, triangle, circle, X, or square, and we tap them to close out these rings. I think speedrunning this game is going to be interesting to see the different combos people input on this, and also when you miss input and it ends up prolonging your run. If you accidentally press the wrong button and you overstep your inputs, you actually press the square button to go backwards one and start over. The weighty feel of the movement can feel a bit odd when it comes to specifically the landing. Like when you jump and you land, it does feel a bit slower and took a little bit longer for Hugh to pick his weapons up and actually aim back at the enemy. This might change over time, as it still is a very early build, of course, but that's one thing that I noticed when playing this. Also, Hugh and Diana, they do talk to each other throughout the demo. It's not a whole lot. I imagine it's going to be a lot more during the full game, but it was a fairly short demo, about 15 minutes. They have combat interactions where they speak to each other, level interactions as well, and we get to see how their relationship eventually will develop. They also have a cute interaction where Diana asks if she's boring, and Hugh replies that with the amount of chit chat that she does, there's no way that he could ever be bored. We finally opened up all 5 locks and could proceed forward towards the end. We're now finding in this room, it's a giant circle room with tons of weapons and ammo and health pods, which immediately tells everybody, including myself, that there's going to be a boss soon. I noticed that one of the devs was standing really close to me during this. Moving forward, I ended up triggering the boss cutscene where a giant mech, almost looking like Metal Gear Rex, comes out. And as we're getting ready to battle it, before you know it, and I'm getting engaged into the game, the dev literally snatches a controller from my hand saying, sorry, but that's the end of the demo. It's literally the biggest tease. I had a huge inventory. I was walking around collecting so much shit. I wanted to see this boss fight, but apparently this is how the demo has been for everybody. I was talking with Simmons before we played this, and he warned me that the devs basically let you start the fight and then use a crowbar to pry the controller from your hands. It literally was like a running joke with everybody because they actually went ahead and did this every single demo playthrough. Pragmata actually releases in 2026. I triple asked the dev this, and he confirmed and said that it's very much going to be releasing then. So it seemingly is a real game, guys. And I actually played it. It was really fun. I think the gameplay loop is extremely interesting, especially coming from Capcom, which, if you think about it, in 2026, they're aiming to just absolutely crush gaming. They have a Resident Evil 9 game in February 2026, a game that's going to be taking place in like 2025, more modern times. Then we have Onimusha at some point, a game taking place in old world Japan, fighting samurai zombies. And now we have Pragmata, another 2026 game, a space game that has shooter and hacking combat elements. These are three wildly different games coming out from Capcom next year. And let's not even talk about Monster Hunter Wilds getting updates too. Capcom, you guys are fucking crazy. Once again, thank you Capcom for inviting me to preview these three games. I'm still traveling on the road. I just really wanted to get this to you guys in time for embargo. We have a lot more to talk about, of course, and it doesn't just stop there. Those are just my initial impressions and details I noticed. If you have any questions, please comment them down below so I can answer whatever I can. And as soon as gameplay is available, you know I got you guys covered. Be sure to like the video if you enjoyed and subscribe if you are new. More Capcom videos are on the way and you don't want to miss them. My name is BltzZ, and thanks for watching.